Hello grapplers and welcome to a new video. Today we're gonna talk about sticks. I changed the buttons and the joystick of one of my sticks to the other one. If you really want me to go in depth about buttons, joysticks and other things, let me know down in the comments. So one of the controllers I have is a Hori Fighting Edge for PS4. First thing you're gonna notice if you compare it to the Mad Catz T2 Plus, which is also the other controller I have, is the difference in the layout of the buttons. The Hori uses something called the Noir layout, and this is named after the cabinets, the Namco cabinets. They use a different layout for the buttons. You'll see that the buttons follow a curve, and they really adapt to your hand when you put your hand on the controller. Usually also the Noir layout has a more distinct, bigger gap between the actual joystick and the buttons. This is not necessarily always the case, but usually Noir has a gap that is bigger than the Bulicks, which is the one that you'll see more often, and that is named after the Taito Bulicks cabinets. The joystick and the buttons are closer, and also they follow a straight line after the first two buttons. There are other ones like Sega has their own one, but for the most part this is the layouts you're gonna see for sticks. This always goes out the window when we talk about leverless controllers, because those guys follow their own style. Why did I switch the joystick and the buttons? Just because I wanted to. Sometimes you want to try something different. My preference is Noir layouts. Now this is something you're gonna hear during the entirety of this video. It's all a matter of preference. You'll notice that I have a screwdriver over here and some pliers. You don't necessarily need those two things. Some arcade sticks just have a button like the T2 Plus or the Alpha, the Hori Alpha. You have buttons that open the stick up, especially the front, and you can have access to the buttons and the PCB and the cables. But that Hori Fighting Edge, you do have to open it up with a screwdriver. It has Phillips screws in order to open the stick up. And even some newer sticks have that thing, like the Qanba, newer Qanba. In fact, the Qanba Obsidian 2, a stick that is for PlayStation 5, you need a Phillips screwdriver in order to open it up. So it's not always the case, but the majority of sticks just have a button. You can open them up, and you save the trouble of actually having to have a screwdriver around. Although you should have one. That is like a life lesson for you. Always have tools. But the T2 Plus, if you ever want to get one, is the one you have to go for. The one I have is the Street Fighter V version, which has, or had, as you can see, I have a different art. But the OG art was just Ryu, the Street Fighter V Ryu. This one comes with a screwdriver, and you can remove the top. It's a very interesting mechanic for you to open the stick up. You don't need a screwdriver. You can always carry it inside the stick. On one side you have the flat head in order to open up the majority of the screws, and the other side has an hexagon in order for you to open up the art and other different screws that are around. And you'll see I have another button right there. That button is a Sanwa button, OBSF. Classic 30mm Sanwa buttons that are in a lot of sticks, and also they are very OG. These buttons are extremely old. If you're over 30, probably you'll recognize these buttons from your local arcade. They have changed the model a little bit. This is the classic OBSF. You have to push them in order to put the button in. You have these two parts over here. You have to push them to, well, take the button out. Some newer arcade sticks still use OBSF buttons like the Obsidian. And even leverless controllers, some of them that still use push buttons, go for the Sanwa classic ones, like the Hitbox. The stick the Mad Catz TE2 Plus had is a Sanwa JLF. It's very good. Out of the box, it's very good for 2D games. However, my advice, if you're getting an arcade stick that has a Sanwa, try it with time and do consider upgrading the Sanwa, not necessarily moving to another stick, because you can change a few parts of the Sanwa JLF or the Sanwa JLX, which is the newer model, to increase the performance of the stick. Again, this all depends on you. You do have to test and see if this is the right controller for you. One thing you can immediately change is the restrictor. This is a square one. Some people prefer the octagon one. If you want to play, for example, Tekken or Virtua Fighter with just a Sanwa JLF, you might need to change the spring, because it's not really that good for other than 2D games. And even for some 2D games like maybe AOF, you might want to also change the thickness or of your spring in order to provide more control. Depending on your stick, you'll have different colors. Usually they have some sign, especially the stick is more or less new. You will have a sign with all the different colors for different buttons. I do recommend using tape maybe and a marker just to write a few extra things down there in order for you to easily reassemble the stick. Because some of them don't have anything, like the Hori one. It's basically a blank state. You'll see that the Sanwa over here, this black OVSF, has a small plastic around it. That's because the TE2 Plus needs like a razor in order for the button to be above the acrylic. You'll see to the left that we have different buttons, and these ones are crown or samduka, some people call them. In order for you to use the crowns, you have to screw them in. They have a small plastic piece over here you can screw in order to put them in place. Inside of them, you can have different kind of switches. The same mechanical switches you can use for keyboards. This is a huge rabbit hole, because I cannot tell you which one would be suited for you. There are so many different combinations. By default, they mostly have a linear gray switch, but you can change them for almost whatever you want. And that will completely change the entirety of the feeling of the button. If you're wondering if you can diminish the sound, because some people are really annoyed by how these are very loud, you can have you can mod them in order to dampen the sound, or you can buy them already modded. And also remember to lube your micro switches to reduce the sound of them. Besides hitbox, I think most leverless controllers are going for, like this one that I have over here, this is a G16. Most of them go for mechanical switches. In the case of this one, it has some gray roots. You'll see right here, I have one over here, but you can mostly do or use whatever you want. I have another Kyle red one, which is very good for typing. I haven't tested this one for fighting games, but you can definitely do whatever you want. This is how customizable things are. It's insane. And now looking to the other side, you'll notice that I have that Crown 309, a Helpme model. In case you're wondering why that thing is called Helpme, that's the name of a Korean player, specifically a Lee player who was really good. I think he's coming back with Tekken 8, and he helped to design that specific version of the crown. So that is pretty common. You have the Novi stick. Niiya has his own stick. You have the golden lever. You have so many sticks. It is insane how fun this world is. I have to be honest. It's pretty fun. You'll see that I have another cable here. This cable is an adapter. This goes from the PCB to the actual cable that is going to connect to the stick. This is referred to as a 5-pin to 8-pin connector, or as a 5-pin to all connector. Basically what this does is takes the 5-pin, which is used for say Mitsu, Sanwa, into another type which is mostly used for the crown, the golden lever and other sticks. So it divides the directions and you can connect them to the stick. The stick, the crown one that I have over here, has a lot of interesting things. First of all, that small white area, you'll see that small rubber, that is called the actuator. Basically what it does, it controls the dead zone of the stick. But inside the actual stick, inside the 309, you have another rubber, and that rubber is the one that controls the tension. By default it has a purple one, but you can change that for anything else. These two have different strength, different tensions, so you can completely customize your stick. Specifically if you play Tekken, you might want to go for the perfect stick, because you need those fast movements. If you play for example a Mishima, it will be a completely different stick to someone who plays Nina or King. And well, the same thing we can say it applies to Street Fighter. It's very different. The necessities of a Sangi player are very different to probably an Akuma player. Those are the two, well, brands I use for this video. But again, you have a lot of different things you can do for your stick or your level-less. Now this world is very, I would say it's kind of difficult to get into. Hopefully you have a friend that can help you with this so you can interchange parts. Otherwise you have to just buy a ton of them and start testing. Don't go crazy, because none of these things I told you, none of them guarantee you will be better at the game. These are just for you to be more comfortable with the way you're playing the game, which is very different. As always, if you really like this video, please subscribe, If you want me to talk more in depth about, because this was very surface level. If you really want me to talk about switches, buttons, controllers, let me know, because this is something that really I have a really huge passion for controllers and buttons and switches and leverless and sticks. So if you really want to know, well, I'm all ears or eyes, I guess. Have a great week. Take care as always. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.